Alright, top left, playing Protoss. He is Reynor. In the top right, as the red Zerg, it is Denver. If adapting on the fly is the whole point, everyone playing barcode should be the standard then. No one plays and practices all builds. You prepare for the tendencies. I imagine is what that was supposed to be. Tendencies. I mean, I think that's just a... I mean, I think it would actually be okay if people played... honestly, to a certain extent. I think the problem with that comes more on the admin side. Just like keeping track of who's who. Making sure that no one impersonates or lies or fakes, basically. More so than it is like, am I facing Reynor or am I facing Lambo? I don't know. But besides that, let's say that it is legitimately because it's an unfair ruling. That you can't know who your opponent is. I think that's just like the conversation and argument then becomes what is the extreme? And I think that would be kind of extreme. But I don't think changing race, which is already a super rare thing that is, again, agreed by the general community to be something that is harder and thus more detrimental to your overall play, should be disallowed. Like, I think the barcode has problems outside of just the whole, like, well, what is fair if you're supposed to be just adapting on the fly? I think the problems, like, would be administration, as well as, oh, my second point. Hold on. The fact that it wouldn't really be of any more or less difficulty. There'd be no entertainment value to it. In my opinion, I know there's some people who love the barcode tournament. I don't really care about it. Also, it would just be completely impossible when it came to offline tournaments. You'd never have 2 people up on stage. You always have to have like 4 and like play like a little cups game or something like that. But I think that there's enough negatives and just pure like skill and almost audacity to playing different races that I think that would be nothing but positive in entertainment value and nothing but commendable as far as skill goes as well for, you know, whoever is capable of doing it. So that would be the biggest difference between what you're suggesting and what I'm suggesting. IMO. But if you want to be that way, then by all means argue against it. I'm sure you're also the type of player who hates random and barcodes on ladder, and that's your prerogative. So, what do we have going on here? Reynor is Protoss, from what I've seen, and I have not actually got to cast him personally before. I didn't catch those replays that he did on the Open Cup. But what I've seen kind of casually is that he does play a hero-like style pretty well. What is seemingly his downside is that he forgets about really simple things. I think he literally said that. Is why he lost his second qualifier, I believe, the last qualifier. The first one, he got sick. I think he might actually have COVID, I believe. So he was, you know, he didn't feel like playing it out. He actually forfeited kind of mid-tournament, and that's fair. Felt really, really terrible. But the second one, I think, is when he lost to like a Baneling bus and something else kind of cheesy. He faced Radata, and Radata's a very aggressive Zerg player. So I think he then acknowledged that he kind of forgets some of the simpler stuff, which does tend to happen. If you're not playing a race as your main race, that is one of the first things that kind of falls through the cracks, is kind of the dumb things, you know? If anyone's ever tried to play a different race, I think you'd very much understand what I mean by dumb things. If you've only ever played one race, you might be like, what the hell does that mean? But just the silly tiny things, you know, keeping your Stalker on hold position, the difference of an Adept for Stalker wall, for instance, and as far as Protoss goes, general wall stuff, right? We always take it for granted watching the pros wall off, but then, you know, we try it and we're like, oh shit, we have to actually think about this. Or the kind of all-ins that a person can throw at you. You might remember 1 or 2, but you don't remember this one. Big old Ling Flood with the Overlord drops. You might not. So this is the question. Is Reynor going to be good enough to A, scout this, and then kind of B, predict it? Because as far as scouting goes, he might actually have that. And he did see the Overlord drop, and obviously now he sees a bunch of Lings. But can he actually deal with it is a whole other question. As someone who doesn't play this race 100%, he might not be as familiar. And already he is starting to lose outs. The Lings busted through the Stalker before the wall could be re-put down. 10 probes go down. That's not too bad, because Reynor is on 3 bases, but he doesn't need to get the wall back up, and he doesn't need to worry about the next phase of the attack, which is 4 Overlord drops and 6 Queens coming along with them. So the Phoenix that he went for, the double Stargate that Reynor went for, is potentially useless. And I am going to use the word useless. Oh my god, drop the Queens. Oh my god, drop the Queens. Okay, well, they wouldn't have been useless if they killed the Overlords first, clearly. But if everything gets out, if all the Lings and Queens get out, then you really gotta wonder what can these Phoenix do. Big ol' recall to get the probes out of the trap? Okay, but all the Phoenix are dead, and... Oh no, they're not. They're weak, though. They're severely weakened. Pylon got taken down in the double Stargate production, which is really most of Reynor's production. He does have 2 gateways, able to hold on to the natural currently. Still has 3 Phoenix, a Void Ray, and an Oracle, but... I mean, this is really tricky, and this has certainly done a lot of damage. But keep in mind that Denver started this attack on a very, very low drone count. And I think the other downside here is that Reynor doesn't have any really important things to be doing right now. That's a weird way to put it. He doesn't have anything that's leading to another thing. He is right now still basically defending and recovering his economy, which is exactly what he has to be doing. He's got to keep on building probes because he can do that. But I mean, as far as advancing his technology, as far as advancing his army that can actually go across the map, he really isn't doing either one of those things. So it's like, great, you're going to keep up on the probes, but then what are you building to in this PDZ? Will the Zerg not simply outpace you? And I think the answer to that was yes, but then Denver also got Lings back in the base and killed him straight up. So there you have it, GG. Denver with a relatively quick 1-0. Very possible. Listened to Reynor's own self-criticism and said, you know what? This guy's not going to hold against a Ling all-in. I don't think this is a complex of an issue when you make each player declare race for vetoes. I feel like people sometimes are like missing this whole conversation. Because there's a second person that was like, isn't there a simple solution? 1, the problem was more that it changed midway. 2, if we're talking about purely hypothetical conversations, the purely hypothetical conversation is, should it be allowed? So yes, if we just said yes or no, that would be rather simple. That's very correct. But if you're really looking for an argument, a debate about whether it should or should not be allowed, that gets a lot more complex. So it's probably going to be that TSL is just going to stick with their new rules after this. They're going to say you have to tell your race before the map vetoes on each game. My debate was on whether or not that should be the case. Because I think there is important factors to be gained on the whole being able to keep that a secret. Personally, I'm a fan of that type of entertainment and that type of skill expression that can be shown from very few players. There's a reason this is often not even a problem considered. It's because it's so rare, so hard to do. But anyways, game number 2 is starting with some fire. Denver going for a 12 pool in the bottom left. Top right, once again, Protoss. It is Reynor. Because even without, to make it even more simple, this is what I started off with too, is I was always of the opinion / assumption that they had to pick their race for the entire series. I actually could have sworn that was what most tournaments decided. Is that they had to pick a race for the entire series. Because that, I do believe, has been a rule in the past. So I think that would have also been a simple solution, as you say. So Reynor might again be missing some of the finer points of dealing with a 12 pool. And while you playing the race that is doing the 12 pool, so you have done the 12 pool to other Protosses, might give you some insight as to what is problematic or not on each perspective, it still kind of misses the finer points. So again, kind of, you know, very, very, very basic would be... Oh, even a pylon's a little bit delayed right now. Very basic would be the actual wall type. You know, okay, I got my wall, it's a wall, is there a problem? Okay, maybe you could have made a wall that had less surface area. 2, kind of the accommodating what your opponent is building. So if you're only really used to opening up with a certain build order that doesn't include 2 gateways and a zealot being produced, maybe your pylon is not on time. And that's, I think, exactly what happened here. And they're pretty much just like teenage problems. You're still kind of a teenager playing out the race until you're really used to it. And you figured out your own way of approaching difficulties. Then we can say you reach adulthood. Oh, that was really nice timing on Reynor's part. But I think Reynor is kind of caught right now, still being a bit of a teenager. I mean, he's literally a teenager, but when it comes to the Protoss race. And Denver is trying to take advantage of his almost immaturity, I suppose. Of the little things. But not only that, I had explained this earlier watching some other Denver best ofs. Denver retired. He said he wasn't going to be a full-time pro gamer anymore like a year ago. And like most StarCraft pros, he just continued playing anyways. It did seem to be a very sudden switch, dramatic switch of him being mostly known as a macro player. Mid-game all-ins, sure, but not really known for doing a bunch of 12 pools. To then doing a bunch of 12 pools against Protoss. So there's also a bit of a blip where I think the meta... A lot of Zerg players that we know as macro players were doing 12 pools. That seemed to happen on like Submarine, that map pool. But Denver stuck with it. So happens here. I think it's a bit twofold. I think Denver is liking that play style a lot more now, and that gives him control over the situation. Kind of throws off his opponent. And then 2, there's a chance that Reynor once again doesn't defend as perfectly as maybe a main Protoss would have. As it is, besides that little supply block, Reynor's timing's actually worked out rather well. Gets up his Nexus, gets up a Stargate, and Denver just drones. So. Depending on the map format, GSO, you have tons of time to prepare opponents would be disaster if they just race swapped. I mean, Flash does it in ASL, and ASL is a lot like GSL, so.
Twitch Prime sub received. Thank you for appeasing the overmind.
Oop. 2 oracles, get in, kill 1 drone, was it? They have Game Heart on. Am I being bamboozled? Because they didn't pop up, but maybe they actually killed more. Anyways, Conma SC, thank you for that Prime sub. Reynor's 20 now? Oh, he's not a teenager. Okay. Well, it's Protoss is still a teenage phase. It's also less of a factor, matters less if the map pool is well balanced. So that's also an interesting point to bring up as we watch kind of a macro game unfold here. Well, wait, hold on. Wait. Actually, is Denver just gonna all in? No, he's got a layer on the way. He's getting a Roachborn though, which and he's getting roaches. No, I mean maybe not all in's not the right word. Oh, there are depths on the way. This isn't a Resident Enclaves though. So that was just me being blind, looking at chat, not what was building. Okay, so a lot of adepts were made, to be fair. So I don't think you need that many roaches. This is a bit of a disaster for Reynor currently, as he loses the oracles as well. So Denver, well, now he can just push across the map either way, so... Yeah, alright. Cleans up the Adepts. Now has a super easy walk across the map, is even bringing the Queens. Oh, was the layer just going to be for Overlord creep? Was that his plan? Because you might have seen the Adepts, known that he was going to be attacked, kind of accepted the attack, and was totally preparing for basically a counterattack. That was also just prepared in advance, which is very fair. Because even if the Adepts had done more damage, the Adept problem is that they sacrifice themselves, don't have any army left over, and you might still die. Denver seems to be all over this particular ZVP. I think Reynor got a lot of credit for his Protoss when he defeated Solar at Valencia, and then I think someone mentioned that he beat Hero Marine as well. But I actually, you know, okay, I don't want to just give judgment right here, right now, on whether Reynor's Protoss is actually good. That's not exactly fair. It could be a Denver thing, it could be an aggressive Zerg thing, it could be an off day for Reynor, whatever. But I will say that Solar apparently was having some of the worst days of his life, which is really quite sad. He was going through some stuff. Is very vague, but all the information we really have during Valencia. So he kind of acknowledged that he just wasn't playing well, wasn't going to play well. So it wasn't as shocking as I think people were giving it credit for. Reynor winning against any top-level pro, whether they're having a good day or a bad day, is impressive with an off race. It is impressive, but I think that, plus maybe a couple of other surprise victories in the Open Cups, kind of gave this illusion of the Reynor having some really rock-solid Protoss, but it seems like today, not so rock-solid. Not so much. And you might be saying, that's unfair. He did an Adept attack to someone who was preparing an, you know, kind of an all-in. Well, he also lost his Oracles kind of unnecessarily, so there are potentially minor points. You're like, oh, stop being so critical. But they are points. I mean, they're kind of the points that you'd be bringing up if you were watching... I don't know. If you're watching, like, the 6400 MMR player versus the 6800 MMR player, you know? You'd be like, oh, they're both amazing at StarCraft. Much better than I'll ever be. But here's the reason that this lower MMR actually isn't quite considered all that great to this guy with this MMR, you know what I mean? It seems to be kind of happening. Reynor's lost his third base. He's actually trying to get up his fourth right now. Or replacement third. Denver has moved on from this all-in, which has been effective. And Reynor is still trying to kind of hit that critical mass of Stalkers that might initiate a bit of a counter movement. And I think Denver has picked up on that a little bit. He knows that he might be pushing into a increasingly lost battle. So he starts to pull back, which I like. He's going into Infestors, which I also really appreciate. It's not exactly on the biggest economy. It is a direct result of seeing these Blink Stalkers, but I do like it. Kind of bring the Infestor Fungal back against Stalkers. Do respect this little attack here from Reynor while he gets up again, what is kind of, I guess, a hidden base at this point. Denver should have more reinforcements on the way. If Reynor were to win with this, that would be kind of cool. That would be really cool. And it would be because perhaps Denver, you know, overplayed his hand right here, continuing to attack in. Perhaps because he did go for Infestors over to straight up more units, because that can be the downside, right? But yeah, I thought the Defender's Advantage would kick in well enough, and with that Fungal actually doing a lot there, it absolutely did. And Reynor is going to have to rebuild his Stalker count, which is exceptionally hard to do on a solid 3-base economy, which he's really only just gotten up to, but yeah, much less on a 2-base economy. Now it's 3. Well, it's a very dangerous 3. I don't know if we're going to guarantee they're going to have it for a very long time. Yeah. And now I think we're at a point where it's understandable I didn't hype this up that much. This actually was kind of hype, the moving of the stalkers across the map. I started to doubt my own expectations, but now we're at that point where like, yeah, okay, I don't really have to hype this up. Reynor is pretty dead. Disruptor isn't gonna come out. Yeah, there's no second Rovo, so yeah. And they didn't make game hard. Darn it. Yeah, pretty much it. GG. JJ. Some more discussion about this whole, like, choosing race thing. Oh, whoops, that's the wrong map. La. Just kidding, guys. I joined the wrong lobby. Someone says, well, Flash dominates the Brood War circuit as random because random gives such an advantage. I mean, if random gave that much of an advantage, then why aren't more Brood War players playing random? But then, we're not talking about choosing random, actually. We're talking about race picking. And I guess the idea would be that Flash being Flash would still be amazing if he was just race picking, right? So, you know, the discussion of random isn't even pertinent here. I know it sucks to be on a 90-second delay talking about this stuff. Yeah, it dominates the Brood War scene because random is so good. I am of the understanding that random is better in Brood War than it is in StarCraft 2, but I am not of the understanding that it is so powerful that that is why Flash wins. Okay, so potentially last map already. In the top right of Data C, it is Reynor. On bottom left, it is Denver. Whenever a player says they're going to retire, they always overperform in the wake of it. Kind of, yeah. But Denver said that, as I said, maybe a year ago at this point. Maybe even longer, I don't know. So his... The whole... overperforming in the wake of it. It's a good way of putting it. I think that's already passed. I think he is probably... I don't know. I feel like he might not win against Reynor Zerg. But then that is obviously in question. If Reynor was sure he was going to win ZVZ, why isn't he playing Zerg? No. I don't know. Denver had his high moments almost immediately after, like a lot of people do when they retire, but it's been a while. Cheeky probe. Flash would have won is the best StarCraft meme. It is. I don't really know why Reynor's playing Protoss, other than I think he legitimately saw some promise in it versus Zerg, more so than the randomness that is ZVZ. Because I do kind of get that, but now that he's lost multiple qualifiers trying to do it, it does make you wonder. Because you're right, this is an important qualifier. So... who knows? Oh, time for emote only for a while. Now the question is, will I remember to turn it off? Ha! So, alright. Potentially last game. Reynor hasn't been doing so hot. He's been all in twice. And Had something to show in the last game. Maybe the first game not so much, but last game, yeah, okay. Maybe we'll finally get a macro game and see what his true Protoss is made out of. But he does have the lower bracket to go through. The issue there is that only one person from the lower bracket advances. It is not the top two, bottom two like the previous qualifiers were. The other issue is that the server qualifier, which is the very much last chance that Reynor would have to qualify, is top one. And while the European server qualifier probably will legitimately just be Europeans playing on it, that is the landlocked situation. Anyways. I mean, it's still incredibly difficult. That's very much a risk, even for Reynor on his Zerg. So, he is seriously running out of options. He is. He technically can play in a North American server qualifier or the Korean one. But those are all top one, so it's not like it's all that easier. And the North American one is the... Everyone comes around here for their last chance, so it's not exactly all that easy. Five drones have gone down to a single Oracle. A single Oracle. This game hearts put back on, thank goodness. And that is one of the Reynor's best starts so far. It's going into triple Oracle, maybe a Twilight Council right afterwards. Kind of feeling it right now. Feeling it. And Denver might just be going into that +1 melee once again, but he is taking a lot of damage from the Oracle. This is already so much better for Reynor. It's already so good. Build order looks pretty clean as well. And he's getting even more probe damage. While getting his third base up, kind of no problem. Does recall the Oracles at the site of maybe these Lings taken on as Adepts, or just because they were injured, either way. Yeah, just because they were injured. No more Lings were on the way. He had 2 sentries and Adept holding the line at third base. So yep, just because they were injured. Wanted to get them out. Wanted to pair them up with the third Oracle again. Good relation. Taking the forward gases. It's kind of scary. If Reynor were to only see that and just presume these were all taken, that'd be very much wrong. Now more being taken, but still. You got the Oracles in the natural. You can get him back into the main. You can recheck the third base. And hopefully get an idea of what Denver is doing, which, you know, by the way, currently is kind of undetermined. Just filling out his gases right now, but with no tech options quite yet. Now he adds on a Roachhorn. So I think Reynor's also wondering where is the technology, where is the sign of what is next. He saw an Evolution Chamber, and that was pretty much it, which is going to grab +1 melee. And then a Roachhorn with 6 gases? Really? No Baneling Nest, no Hydras? Isn't that a lot? IDK Zerg. Fortunately, you know who DK's Zerg? It's Reynor, so. Okay, now I knew that something was up. Oh my god, I'm kind of, sort of smart. Spire is on the way. But, you know, if I'm also wondering what the hell is going on, then Reynor certainly should be as well. He does not have all the information that we do, though. He once again got the third. He did check the main base again. He saw a lair, but that's, you know, normal time lair. And he hasn't seen the natural, so... Yeah. I'm certain it's on his mind. I think he's played Protoss enough, getting to the level that he's at, to know that Surprise Mutas is a real bitch. But, you know, he might not even have to worry about it with this particular timing that he has. Not because the timing is going to win the game and, like, no sweat. What's the big deal? Just because with an attack, Denver has to pick and choose. So if he did make mutas, well, they'd be flying a bunch of Blink Stalkers, not exactly useful. If he doesn't make mutas, well, by the time he can make mutas, after a bunch of scuffles back and forth, it probably won't be all that devastating. So really, Reynor is winning out with this particular attack. Lots of units just strolling right up into Denver's 4th base prior to the attack defense being done, prior to the roaches being made or arriving, and then just slightly before the Raptors were made as well. Denver was actually the one not quite on the ball. So it kind of looked like he was the one that was going to be hiding this big Omega Seeker that was going to be really amazing if it actually got to come to fruition. And that's probably true if he got to build those units. But I'm not sure he was actually watching them move out there. Maybe he could have built his roaches a little bit sooner and had a little bit more of a defense. But even then, with how kind of greedy he was being, right? He might have just been rolled over regardless. Not a 3-0, yay. Okay. Game number 4 on Cosmic Sapphire. Bottom right, Denver. Top left, Reynor. Reynor gets to really do his thing, is the biggest difference. Technically, he got some time to do his thing in game number 2, but his thing with the Adepts didn't really work out. Now, last game was really a Protoss capable of doing their build without interruption, and then able to display their micro as well. There is really no run-bys or pesky little units that were bothering him, so his oracles were miscontrolled and they died. Now, they were used very, very well, so right from the get-go, getting those 5 drones, getting 4 more, then a couple more after that, that's exactly what you want to be seeing from a Protoss player who opens up that style, while, of course, macroing well, which he was doing. And then building up to that push, which was not an all-in. There was a 4th base on the way behind it. But that is the pressure applied at a time where a lot of Zergs kind of getting used to it for a while there. I think they are, but Denver was maybe a little more focused on keeping that Spire safe, and perhaps didn't also give enough respect to the rush distance between that 3rd and 4th base of his, that he was ill-prepared when it actually hit him. But I don't think it was exactly surprising that it wasn't like a gasless all-in. It wasn't 3 base, 8 gates, 3 gas, or whatever it is that hero does. There was a 4th on the way. There was a lot of gas taken, and I'm sure there was plans to get into a +2 beyond that if it wasn't already started. So, but that is the type of pressure that is applied that a Zerg really has to respect, and if they don't respect it, they can be snowballed, whether they get completely surprised by it, like, oh, I really have nothing, or if they just have a little bit too less and not in position to do so. So I think, actually, with the way that hero plays, you have to get like an absurdly fast Spire, which is still pretty dangerous to do. Or you'd, yeah, I'm not really sure you can go for a Spire. It just feels so dangerous to do so. Not just the 200 into the Spire, plus the drone, but the amount of gas and income, money that you'd have to actually save to have a final result of that Spire, right? So if you're hoarding 800, and then Protoss player pushes into you, even with kind of a small number of units, you do have to respect it. And it makes a more exciting game for the fans, for sure. if the Protoss player actually moves out and, you know, does something. But it also usually makes it a more, you know, back and forth game as well for the players, where they have to be prepared at a certain time and kind of consistently prepared, where I feel like old-fashioned PvZ, there were a lot more lulls. There was a lot more of like, oh, I only have oracles to deal with, I'll be okay, I can fit this in. You know, there might be some type of charge lot Archon push, maybe, but the Stalkers, they can be on the map at a low count and still be relatively safe. Then they suddenly get to like a decent count and you're like, oh my gosh, am I underestimating this? And then they're at a really good count with upgrades, and we still see a lot of Zerg players having difficulty stopping that snowball. Add an Aspire to that, and it's even more difficult to stop a snowball like that. Reynor really did a perfect execution of the build. Denver was being a bit greedy. Can he try this again on this map? Well, it's the largest map that we have, so one could argue, you know, if you were going to do it, do a Spire on this one. But if Reynor's going to play that Blink Stalker pressure, I think it is just extremely dangerous to do. I think it is, right? We'll get a confirmation on whether it's possible or impossible from Zerg players as we continue to watch Blink Stalker pressure dominate the matchup. But to me, yeah, it feels rather difficult, at the very least. Oracles aren't getting nearly as much damage done. In fact, that is the first drone that has been killed. Excellent focus fire there from Denver, realizing he could actually reach back and get that one weakened Oracle. So that almost died. Second Oracle took hull damage. So a better start for Denver this time around. And that is a decent use of the Oracles, getting a cancel and a kill on the drone. It's making that fourth base. Baneling Nest this time around for Denver. So he's not going to go into super fast Hydras like he did versus Skillus. That's what he did. And Reynor is about ready to go with this Stalker pressure. Usually you'd have a few more Stalkers, or at least a couple of sentries with the first push, don't you? I want to say at least six Stalkers. There we go. Okay. 6 and now 8. Looks a little bit more feisty. Now he starts pressuring that creep. There you go. I don't know if there's actually any particular reasoning for making sure to have 6 to 8 Stalkers, apparently. That was very much a feeling call on my part, just watching Hero play a lot of these games, being like, no, there's definitely more than 4. But as far as more, I'm talking like kill shot counts, I don't think there is. I think it just is the decent amounts that can retreat, tear down Lings, retreat, tear down Lings. 4 is an absurdly small number. But already a couple Stalkers have gone down. That's not the best. It's also certainly not the worst, but Blink wasn't done, so this is just being the a certain type of punish on the kind of almost bamboozle timing where it's like, yeah, I don't have Blink, but I have just enough, and you're having just little enough that I can actually abuse this. Then Blink does finish as soon as the Link player says, oh, I can take care of this, and that's when things get really topsy-turvy. So that kind of is what happened right there. Denver almost got a surround. That would have been excellent if Blink hadn't finished up, but Blink did finish up. It was also a bit of an anti-timing from him because +1 melee wasn't done. Now it is finished, but the Stalker count has grown, still protected from the Oracles, which is that additional element to this style of play. Although I gotta say, those Oracles are not juiced up, so I'm not sure if they're really helping, but the Lings aren't getting to that certain quantity that can actually overwhelm this, and it seems a bit silly because these Stalkers, you know, they don't have reinforcements. Typically, it is difficult to get to the number of Stalkers that can beat out the Lings getting those surrounds, but when you kind of start the pressure nice and early, when you've got decent Blink control, when you have the Oracles to kind of safeguard any failures on your part, that can happen. So it's really critical that the Zerg player doesn't let that happen too often. The whole like, oh, I have enough. Oh, I don't have enough. Oh, I have enough. Oh, I don't have enough. As they lose the game the other way. You know, there's the losing the game by under-defending, but there's also losing the game in the over-defending way. By over-defending, we mean not getting enough of an economy, not taking up, not making sure to do other things in the game, such as bother the Protoss player, which is also really important. So Denver, he's able to hold on to his 4th base, or this is 5th actually, his 5th base, which is great, was, you know, still on his side of the map for the entire time. Now runs across the map, gets on top of the defending stalkers that were on that base, and kills the 4th Nexus, which is actually really good for Denver. Reynor backing away at the time that he did probably made sense, but once you kind of let that go, once you let the noose loosen, I suppose, then the Zerg player can try and actually strike back. Where if you watch some of the perfect executions of this PvZ, it is so suppressive. The Zerg player really can't do anything but keep spilling forward with units that are getting picked off from the Stalkers. But you know what was actually really missing? You know what? I thought that was done. I actually thought that was done. +1 melee, or +1 attack never started. That's actually terrible. That is so big of a mistake. I saw his Forge once again a little bit later than his Twilight Council. Watch this. Looked back up at the production tab, didn't see +1 on the way, and thought, oh, I guess it finished. Nah, he just never started it. So this is really supposed to be +2 on the way. Which that is a big difference. +1 on the 8 to 10 stalkers that were still harassing there. It's a few more lings. That's these lings also possibly actually killed before they can quite kill the Nexus. Just, yeah, part of the snowball effect when it comes to this gateway style is some of those upgrades. But now really late to have +2. He's going to be getting to that double forge eventually. But Denver has so much room to play with. It really is not a suppressive style anymore. Once the stalkers they retreated, that's okay to have a lull. But retreating plus having his Nexus killed, that is a huge stopper in momentum. So Denver is not pressured or scared. I mean, hell, this game could have maybe gone for a Spire, but in this game, not going to go for something risky like that. He goes for the straight up just punish. I don't know what Reynor does about this. He's taken the map with bases and creep spread and double lurker dens to immediately get to both upgrades, with the hive hopefully on the way soon, or maybe he just made a mistake. But they're right next to each other, so I wouldn't believe it was a mistake. But he doesn't have a hive on the way, so now I'm wondering if it is a mistake. You know what? I was going on a roll there. I was really getting caught up in my own momentum. I was really excited about this like double upgrade starting immediately, and the hive's not even done, so calm down a little bit. Still, Denver has the map. Denver has not had to worry about being pressured in quite some time, not even like a couple of charge lot run bys. He has been able to secure his bases as well with spine crawlers, taking the gold base too. That's the shared base, that's gold just in general. And eventually, he will have double upgraded lurkers. I mean, the mere fact that he has lurkers at all is already a huge bummer on Reynor's part. If you're cheering for Reynor, it's already a huge bummer. Because lurkers are kind of the epitome of like momentum stoppers. Whether defensive, you can kind of work around, and if you really have a lot of momentum, and you're still kind of pulling the Zerg player apart, you catch the 2 lurkers there, 2 lurkers here. So, you know, they're still good. They can really change the pacing of the game defensively. So that's still true, but offensively, 100% they are momentum stoppers. The Protoss player has to basically deal only with the lurkers, which is almost impossible if they have both upgrades and enough of them as well, you know, 14, 15. This is a really nice attack, but it's also very sacrificial. I mean, it did kill a lot of spine crawlers. But, you know, as much as it was nice to take down the spine crawlers and still have some pepper left after it, that also would have been a loss of a lot of minerals and gas if Reynor had lost it, but he saves it, so it's okay. He is starting his double-pronged pressure is not exactly the word I'm going to look for here, because I don't know if clearing up creep spread is really pressure, but he is starting to split up his army and at least threaten some of that type of engagement problem, which Denver does have to respect. If Denver is not the one that is strangling him with 14 lurkers in a choke, then spreading lurkers from very left side to very right side, well, that is difficult. Ditto on Broodlords, and I did just see a Spire, but it's going to go for an upgrade first, so definitely not eager to go into Broodlords. Reynor certainly has gotten safe on his 4 bases, and since there's only 1 cancel and only some minor trades around this this Blink Stalker push over here minutes ago. They both are getting kind of rich. Reynor even more so. Denver did form a lot of units. He's adding on a decent amount of hatcheries and technology. And spine crawlers just got killed. Which is the resources lost. I mean, still under 10k in a 13-minute game. But Reynor, I think what's really important is not to get content here. Even though he's been not under pressure from the lurkers. He has gotten back on the map. He's finally cleared up some of that creep spread that looked really oppressive. He's not just going to stay on gateways. He's actually going up to stargates, which is really important. Because eventually the lurkers do become kind of too much of a problem. And it looks like Denver is already prepared for the eventuality. This game has been passive enough that he probably feels like there's no real win on the ground yet. Versus Skillis, he got to lurkers. He was able to pressure Skillis. Skillis couldn't quite take on the lurkers of the ground army, and he also couldn't afford to go into stargates. And it was kind of a done deal. Did take a little while. Skillis is a very good player. This time around, Reynor did not have those same difficulties. He did not just get torn apart on his expansion process. He just kind of turtled on 4 bases. Went with the flow and is now able to afford the stargates. So I think Denver picked up on that, is preparing to deal with those carriers, but is also still struggling to deal with the ground, man. Corruptor Piss, classic. And that is probably enough on the defense, but this was a nice attack. Reynor getting 1 base and looking for a second as he does find those lurkers not covering each other. You know, 2 or 3 lurkers, that is absolutely something he can take on. And then a reinforcing one comes in and just dies. I actually think that Denver might have overproduced so many corruptors. He might have been expecting too fast of a Stargate transition. He might have gotten locked into the idea of it's a passive ZDP. One of the biggest things I have to worry about is late game Protoss. Because that is a lot of corruptors to make right off the bat when they actually have not started Stargate production. They haven't traded out their ground army. So 16 corruptors, now 15. They did contribute to this game. They killed a Nexus and a Fleet Beacon. But that is a lot of not ground supply that's helping out in the defense. And that is a Dunzo gold base. It's mined out a little bit. But Denver really is struggling to get enough ground units to respond. 13 lurkers, not all coming together, often disjointed, coming in. Yeah, well, this might be enough, but all their times 3, 4 at a time. Actually, Reynor not paying attention for a brief second, was chasing around Corruptors, so let a couple Archons die. And the Corruptors are still adding damage, which I will applaud. Good job, Corruptors. Truly underrated ability is peeing on things. That is a Forge and a Robo dead. The only Robo? The only Robo. Reynor has kind of torn Denver apart. Denver was in this super macro mode. Didn't really hit that timing that maybe even he was thinking he had. Didn't actually start his hive. And has been reeling ever since. Now he's had an opportunity to consolidate. And he finally gets to this absurd number of lurkers. 29 lurkers with their upgrades. And okay, that we're finally seeing the effect of lurkers, right? But oh my god, are we seeing the effect of lurkers? Reynor tried to take an engagement. He was like, I'm coming in from different angles. I've got some upgraded units, and got destroyed. But he can rebuild on those capital ships. And that is something that I'm not sure Denver is actually prepared for. Initially, I said that maybe he made Corruptors too much too fast. And I still think that's true. But now, as he's afforded his mass lurkers, that is really all he could afford. So getting back into dealing with the carriers is still a big question mark. Actually finalizing the game with just pure lurker is also a big question mark. I mean, they do kill things pretty quickly, but surrounds will always be an issue for them. And again, the lack of resources for Denver means that, well, maybe he is trading out better if at the end of the day he's not able to refill any of his army. Then yeah, Reynor will eventually hold. So that was one of the biggest problems. Reynor did dip down very low in supply, but was able to rebuild it. Denver, not quite the same situation, is on a good enough economy for now, but he has to do a little bit more. Or expand a little bit more, either way. But he is trying to do a little bit more right here, right now. Lurkers just jump on top of the 5th base. Where are the observers? No, the robo died, but I also checked to see if there's observers. There are 2 of them with the ground army. The carriers get caught by the corruptor numbers, which for 3 carriers was just barely good enough. And now the lurkers look to actually get a full surround on Reynor's ground army. The 2 carriers, they're not going to kill anything fast enough to really matter anyways. And they're going to die to the corruptors, even over the shield battery overcharge. That 1 carrier barely living. And the lurkers will take down the shield battery. Recall is used on the ground army. So the carriers also got saved by the looks of things. Okay, so most of the army got saved. But Reynor has also depleted his blank at this point. This has been not exactly all in from Denver, but it's, you know, it's been with this very low economy. One that has been just continuing to decrease as more mineral patches run out and more extractors actually default. So it's been something that he's had to do damage with. But guess what? He finally did that damage. The decision to just be like, okay, lurkers, like freaking lurkers. It worked out. And if he had done that instead of moving on to corruptors as fast as he did, he probably wins the game a bit sooner. Maybe, who knows? You know, that's always a question mark. But the corruptors, I feel like they did delay, even though they added damage. Again, it's kind of amusing that they killed a robo, a forge, 2 fleet beacons, I think. Is that what they did? and a Nexus or 2. And then there was just enough of them to take down the capital ships once that was the response to the lurkers. I mean, this is classic ZVP conundrum, which is that the Protoss players 2 years ago, they were like, dealing with lurkers is really freaking difficult. We gotta have an answer for, you know, the lurkers, and if that's going into late game, it's going into late game. And then we had a terrible meta for a very long time. But the idea is still there, is that the lurkers not always going to beat the ground army of the Protoss, but unless circumstances are really good for the Protoss, like there's not that many lurkers, they've done a good job trading out or dealing damage to the economy, or they get the super sick surround, you know, the lurkers are going to be rather intimidating, let's just put it that way. And then the air is one of the most direct responses you can do against it, and then the Zerg knows that, so they build their own air, and, you know, that's the back and forth that is StarCraft. But that is, at the end of the day, still what an issue is. It's like, if too many lurkers with their upgrades come forward against someone who hasn't won that tug of war and also hasn't gotten into that air, then the Protoss player is going to have one hell of a time. The difference was almost was that Denver did not go into mass lurker initially, kind of went into lurker, but didn't have those upgrades, didn't quite control the area as well as he maybe could have, and then went too much into the corruptors, which now he does need once again. So we once again have all the scouted armies trying to pull Denver apart. Reynor was successful in the mid game with this, and once again trying to be successful in the late game, but it is a comical number of lurkers, even still at 19. Maybe not comical, but a damn good number of lurkers, and they are giving chase. But then when they give chase to the right, Reynor does move in the left. 15 corruptors could take on 4 carriers, but the storms and the Archon was also scaring them away. Here comes the full might of Denver's army. Good focus fire, I believe, there from Reynor to try and tear some of these lurkers down, protect his High Templars to get those storms on top of the corruptors, which they are getting. The Archon getting a couple extra shots as well. One more carrier will fall, but there is certainly a trade there on the corruptor numbers. And the last lurker on this side of the field falls as well, but 12 more still exist. Corruptors once again re-engage, looking for that last carrier, do not actually get it. And this was a surprisingly drawn-out battle. For how much, you know, burst there really could be with the storm and lurkers, that was surprisingly drawn out. Reynor wasn't even using the full might of his army. He was trying to attack over to that right side, which I believe had spines and lurkers at the time. Because again, he has 12 lurkers. Where are they now? Coming over to the left side. But Denver just took, I think, too much damage. So, I mean, the two different army types playing around each other, the air and ground, has proven difficult for Denver to compensate for, I guess. And I mean, it was such a dangerous army to be moving in, though, with, right? For Reynor? That was so dangerous. When you see High Templars almost, like, they weren't alone. They had carriers, they had an Archon backing them up, but they were just, I don't know, they looked like 6 High Templars moving in a ball. They look so juicy. You just figure they're gonna die. They were perfect. They actually dealt with the Corruptors well enough. And that is I guess, the balancing act that I'm saying that Denver has kind of failed on, was that he didn't quite take on the air army or the ground army well enough when it was combined together. And he did, at the end of the day, missplit as well. Maybe if he had brought more lurkers over to the attack over here, he would have cleaned up all the High Templars, which would have led to a cleanup of the carriers. And now Denver's down 30, 40 army supply. I mean, Reynor rebuilt one of his bases. Hasn't rebuilt the other one as Denver tries to take it. They got ourselves a little bit of a base trade. Denver's base just rebuilt. Carriers were rebuilt, by the way. They do jump on top of the carriers, but I feel like I'm saying Corruptors and carriers interchangeably. Corruptors did jump up on top on the carriers, but the Archons, the Storms, once again punish them. So even though they grab one carrier, I think one, they couldn't grab anything else. And Reynor is just playing the runaround game to keep his chances alive in the qualifier. I guess he's done it. You really gotta wonder what would happen if this was a smaller map. If Reynor couldn't run around as much as he did with Denver's, at the time, 24 lurkers, was it? Would that have just straight up killed Reynor? GG. Flippin' GG. Reynor takes it to game number 5. Two 1 lurkers aren't scary. I still think they're scary when there's 24 of them. I mean, 3/3 is better. I know arguing that. But 2/1, double upgraded lurkers, 16 plus lurkers? I don't know. I think that's still pretty scary. Carriers are basically just bougie brood lords. All right, guys. Game 5. Guess what's happening? I believe it's called the rubber match. Is that correct? Am I using that correctly? It is Zerg versus Zerg. Changing it up. 2-2. In the bottom left, now playing his main race, it is Reynor, the Zerg. In the top right, as the red Zerg always has been, I guess always will be, it is Denver.
Thank you for becoming a member.
Isukura. Or Lisukura? Thank you for that tier 1 sub. And the Viance, if I didn't get you, thank you for that prime sub. Thank you, guys. So Reynor finally gained some momentum with his Protoss. He takes game 3 and 4, although 4 was really, really close. And apparently was asked to play Zerg. So he's gonna play Zerg. No cheesing here on Tropical Sacrifice. Denver took the news of it being Zerg in stride, by the way. Just said LOL. This isn't their final chance to qualify for TSL9. There is the lower bracket, and there is the European server qualifier as well. But that means that there's one spot in the lower bracket and one spot in the server qualifier. So not many more spots. Geralt took the first qualification spot in this qualifier. He beats a laser 3-1, which is quite a performance for him. So well done, Geralt. And obviously the winner of this will take the other one. But then the bottom bracket, who still has many a good player, that is only one of them that can advance on. So in the bottom bracket, you have Christiana Strange, DNS Arts, and a Laser all waiting. Harstum got knocked out by DNS. And Spirit got knocked out by Christianer. And Spirit also knocked out Skillis, some of the other, I think, bigger hopefuls to make it through. Well, they're already out. So we are going to get certainly not the expected 11 European players that we expect to qualify. Already things have changed up, even with Kelazur taking one of the spots. I thought was going to go to maybe Reynor in the previous one, but yeah, Reynor has not been able to do it yet. So all comes down to this. ZVZ. Reynor gets a couple of early lings on that third hatch to do some damage, and Denver needs to make an appropriate number of lings to respond with. There's not much of a follow-up from Reynor. Okay, there's a couple more lings on the way, but he is also adding on drones. So I don't think this hatch is going to go down, but, you know, if there is enough early damage, sometimes that can result in a last-second surround on a just low enough hatchery that can, surprisingly enough, get the bop. Not this time around. Not this time. So a little bit of Ling-Baneling scuffle is healthy for the Zerg heart. And that's what they're doing right now. Lots of lings on the way. And Denver's lings are already in that natural base. Good drone pull. Queen pops out as well to help. Banelings are on the run forward. Try and stop this from actually escalating. Okay, the drones are pulled as well. A little bit too far forward. Little sketch, but it is all good. And now, more Banelings, more Lings, more Banelings, more Lings. Biggest difference, Denver up 4 drones. Reynor already with +1 missile on the way. And now adding on his Roachhorn.
Thank you for becoming a member.
Thank you, Silly Dobby, for that gifted sub. The Ling Baneling action continues. Denver is starting to drone up behind this, as well as add on a couple of more Queens. And we have the Roach Warren that will eventually produce even a couple of Roaches to start helping against this pesky Ling Baneling problem. but Reynor really has fallen behind in the drones. He absolutely needs to start recovering on that, and 6 did just pop out with 2 more on the way. Apparently, a couple of drones going down as Reynor actually chose to send, half of his lings across the map. Well, he defended back at home with some help with the banelings, and that will net him 3 drone kills and perhaps 1 or 2 more. Maybe the Queen as well. Good pullback there from Denver, as he also adds on his Roach Warren. But that huge difference that I was talking about earlier, the +1, it is still a huge difference. Reynor's +1 will be done. Denver won't even be starting his, despite having an evolution chamber. Never really found the time. He certainly has the money right now, but never found the time. Maybe he actually was lacking minerals, as he has been pumping out lings consistently. But in the grand scheme of things, that is a losing game for him, as he also loses drones to the banelings entering into the natural. 6 more go down. He was already down in drones before that. Queen is accidentally focus firing a Roach Warren, and Reynor has got a 12-worker lead, an army lead, +1 missile to absolutely 0, and the time for Denver to overrun his opponent with Ling Baneling is ticking away here. The Baneling's going to crash into a Queen, completely wasted. Good pullback there from Denver. There really was no other option, and he will at least set his sights on the 3rd. I don't think he meant to use the Banelings there. Maybe he did, actually. The Lings focused on top of Roach Queen, which then they pulled away. Oh, that was really weird. While the Banelings, I guess, made sure to take down the Banelings that would have stopped him from doing this. That was decisive, but it still might not matter very much. 1 more Baneling is left alive there for Reynor. A very important Baneling indeed. It's almost going to go down there. Finally does, but the amount of Roaches that are actually able to come forth, more Banelings coming forth for Reynor as well, means that Denver cannot find the damage that he needs. Once again, denied from the natural as well, thanks to Reynor's clever Baneling positioning. And Denver is straight up out of luck. He is down in army supply. He's down in drones. Again, no missile on the way. He knows that he was all in with that. And while he does try to recover now, he must know that this game is all but over. +1 carapace gets started for him. That's not going to affect this game for a very long time. Whereas Reynor just really needs to make sure not to have his attack delayed too much. So even though he finally let those lings into his natural, it was finally a bit of an oopsie-daisy. It doesn't really matter, and even Denver knew that. He just taps out. GG. Reynor comes back from the 2-0 deficit with 2 games of Protoss, 1 game of Zerg, and finally qualifies for TSL9. GG.